One more step. Okay, here comes Jeff. Perfect timing. Hold on. We are recording and we're live on the YouTube, and here comes Jeff Harrell.
Sorry.
Hey, Jeff, can you hear us, Jeff?
I got you. Yep.
Go ahead, Bernie, you're good.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to tonight's EIC meeting on Wednesday, July 8th, 2020. I'm Chairman Bernie Gill. I'll be conducting the meeting. The meeting is being held on Zoom as a virtual meeting. All votes will be taken by a roll call vote. We'll start the meeting with roll call. Okay, we got Mary Cronin.
Here.
Yes. Jeff Harold.
Go.
Yes. Mark Massoud.
Yes.
Everybody's cooperating. Alex.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Okay. We have the minutes from June 24th, 2020. Need a motion to accept them?
I make a motion to accept the minutes of June, whatever, 2020.
June 24th. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any remarks, corrections, omissions, additions? Finding none, we'll take a roll call vote. Bernie Gale is a yes. Dr. Cronin,
Yes.
Jeff Harold,
Yes.
Mark Massoud,
Yes.
Alex Walk.
Yes.
Thank you. It's too much work, I don't know. Next item on the agenda is old business. Item 117 and 1121. Mike Mizuko had asked that we table them. We'll start with 1117, Holly Street Extension. Joe, I didn't know if you wanted to speak on this evening or not.
Yeah, you bet. I went out there to the site this afternoon, and there's, just obviously with all the rain that came through here, there was a significant amount of rain and ponding on the site. So I had spoken with Mark yesterday, and we were going to do a site visit, and he couldn't do that, but we will look to do that in the future. I had a conversation with Mike Mizuko, and I talked to him about some possible plans to either enhance or do some sort of mitigation of the invasive species that are on the site. So he indicated that he was going to discuss with the property owner and come up with some sort of plan, I believe, to present at the next meeting.
Anybody want to remark on this?
Mr.
I
Chairman?
did not cite Joe also. Yes,
Sure. I just wanted to say, to add that, right, Joe and I have had a conversation. I had visited the site with him previously. We will go out, and I've read the minutes, and we've conferred with regards to also just to add maybe some stream enhancement to help with to minimize blockage in the stream channel, because apparently flooding is a big concern in that area as well.
any other remarks? Motion to table is in order.
I'll make a motion to table that. Okay, where is it?
Regular activity 1117.
Regulated activity 1117, correct.
Until July 22nd, 20. Is there a second?
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Roll call vote. Bernie Gale is a yes. Dr. Cronin,
Yes.
Jeff Harold,
Yes.
Mark Massoud,
Yes.
Alex Walk.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item 1121, 204 South King Street. Joe, do you have anything on that, or just?
Yeah, well, in my conversation with Mike this afternoon, He indicated that that a surveyor was going to be reflagging the wetlands, and he had not had an opportunity to get that information and update a map, and he hoped to have that for the next meeting as well.
Any other remarks on this? I need a motion to table regulated activity 1121 until our next meeting on 7/22.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to table application 1121 to the next regularly scheduled meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call vote. B. Gallo is a yes. Dr. Cronin,
Yes.
Jeff Harold. Jeff, you're in favor of this?
Looks like we
Mark
lost him.
Masood?
Yes,
I don't see it. Mark Masood's a yes. Alex?
Yes.
I'm a yes
Go ahead.
too. I missed the mute, sorry.
Okay, that's all right, no problem. Next item on the agenda is new business, item 1122, the Women's Center of Danbury. We have Peter Olson here, we have Ben here, and we have Eric here. Who's going to be present? And I'm sorry, Abigail. Peter?
Yes, I'm now unmuted. And I was going to say yes, and Abigail Adams here. Good evening. My name is Peter Olson. I'm an attorney with an office in Bethel at 275 Greenwood Avenue. My firm name is Land Use and Conservation Council. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Women's Center of Greater Danbury, Inc., who's represented by Eric Egan with the nice bookshelves, and our consultants, Abigail Adams and of A2 Landscape, and Ben Dodo of Dodo Civil Engineering. We're here tonight to present a project to you for the construction of a transitional housing facility by the Danbury Women's Center on property located at 89 Rose Hill, which is currently owned by the city of Danbury and has been for some time. It is the site of the former Mallory Hat Factory many, many years ago, currently occupied by a giant concrete slab. The land proposal is that we have divided the property into two parcels, parcel 1 and parcel 2, each about 2 acres. Parcel 1, and I probably should ask that you bring up the map. I could share, or somebody can share, but it is the site plan package, page 4 would be most useful. Yes, I can share my screen. That's good. Okay, there's site plan package, page 4. Parcel 1, you can see, is about 2 acres. It's the bottom parcel. And then parcel 2 is the upper parcel. It goes from the front all the way around the back of parcel 1. It's got 2 pieces to it. The reason for this division was association with the remediation plan, which I'll talk about in a moment, but also we wanted to keep the entire Still River, including the culvert it runs through, on the parcel of land to be retained by the city. So this was accomplished by a first cut recorded in May. So what we're talking about today is an application for our work on parcel 1, but there are some portions of the landscaping plan that are on parcel 2 as well. The arrangement we have with the city is that the city was to undertake a remediation plan, and that actually has 2 parts. Part 1 is all of the dirt moving around and removing soil, burying soil, covering soil. Part 2 will be the construction of our facility, which will act in a number of ways as a cap on the ground, and therefore complete the work at the end of construction of our project. The intention is for the parcel to be conveyed to the Women's Center when we have a building permit issued. At this time, part 1 is complete. The city has completed all of the work for the property to be turned over to the Women's Center. So we've got to get our permits in place for that to happen. All of the activities on our site plan I'll show you that plan right there, number 5. All of the activities are within 200 feet of the Still River, and therefore they are all regulated activities. However, we're not proposing any work in the Still River except as Abigail will detail. And the wetlands themselves are just right along the edge of the river. So it's the river and a tiny, tiny bit of additional wetlands next to it. The remediation plan was overseen by a licensed environmental professional pursuant to plans which were approved by both the state DEEP and the Department of Economic and Community Development, who provided the funding for the city to undertake the remediation program. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Abigail Adams to go through the site plan and the landscaping plan, which I think is going to be page 13. I'll forward it down for you, Abigail.
No,
and-
you know what, Peter, I'm going to give a little bit of a background so I can share my screen and go through the sheets as I
Got it.
have set up, if that's okay.
You got it. I stopped sharing, so I'll tell you.
All right, share screen. Here's my plans. Come on. Sorry, it's being a little difficult. And my computer's going to be difficult. Because why not? Okay, well, as we start, good evening, everyone. For the record, Abigail Adams, registered landscape architect, owner of A2 Land Consulting, New Fairfield, Connecticut. I am going to give a little bit of a background of existing conditions and then what we were proposing, and then I will pass it over to Mr. Dodo to get into some of the deep process and whatnot. So, sorry, my computer's got a little bit of feedback. Okay. I think everybody knows where the site is, located on Rose Hill Avenue, sort of to the northeast side of that. We're bordered to the southeast by the railroad tracks over here. And as Peter mentioned, we've got the Still River, which enters the site via a culvert here at Rose Hill Avenue, moves through the site along here. If everyone can see my little hand there, then we daylight again up at the top of the property, moves around, then bisects the site again and flows down to the southeast here. Wetlands, for the most part, follow the edge of the river. There's flags shown on the plans. These were flagged by Davidson Environmental in April of 2018. As you will note in their report, they state that wetlands and water courses present consist of the Still River and small areas of bordering alluvial floodplain soils. This is an urbanized and channelized segment of the river with portions of the riverbank bordered by stone retaining walls. So every once in a while, we've got a little bit of wetlands that are running up past the channel of the river, but it's few and far between. Again, mostly the edge of the river is the wetland area, the extent of the water course. Generally speaking, the site slopes from this northwest corner here down to the Still River through the site, with the majority of the site being flat, where the old factory used to sit. In relation to this application, we are proposing site improvements that include the construction of a 10,400 square foot building to create a transitional housing facility. Site amenities will include on-site parking in front of the building here, site lighting and outdoor play space in this corner of the building here, and then fencing around the perimeter of our property, this parcel number 2. We're parcel 1, right, Peter?
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, parcel 1, we follow the fence line there to make this a just to enclose our property here. The site plan provides a simple layout with the building towards the rear. and the parking in front with the access drive that utilizes an existing curb cut and the circular parking area for ease of movement throughout the site. With the grading plan here, we're not proposing any drainage structures on site. All flow will be overland, mimicking the existing conditions, which Mr. Dodo can speak to when he presents if he has any additional information. But as you can see, we're working with the grades to continue the flow around the building and down to the river. Move to sheet 8. If we take a look at sheet number C04, sheet 8 in the package, you'll see the pre and post development impervious area is hatched here. This is pre, that's the factory and other concrete areas here. And then you will see our post development here. There's no net increase in impervious as part of this proposal. Which is why the overland flow and no drainage structures works out so nicely here. Overall, we have a net fill of approximately 270 cubic yards of fill. In terms of utilities for the site, city water and sewer are available in Rose Street, and we are proposing to connect to those. I'm just going to briefly move back to sheet number 5 to the site plan, which indicates the various 100-year flood limits of the floodplain with varying elevations. You can see we have various ones throughout the site here, again, different elevations. As you can see, a significant portion of the site is located within the 100-year floodplain. Tate and Howard was retained to conduct a flood study, and essentially the entire design of this site, what is being proposed, has been dictated by this study. I am going to quickly pull up. This was, I just want to show the commission. Early on, we developed this concept plan, which had the building farther away from the river, the parking and access drive wrapping around with some rain gardens and buffer plantings and screen plantings. However, this alternative was rendered not feasible based on the flood study. So it was not possible to do this alternative. So therefore we had to move to the building being pushed back with the parking in front. And the proposed building is situated at an elevation well above the 100-year flood elevation. And as part of that, a 100-year flood egress path is provided. Maybe I can zoom in a little bit without messing up my computer, having everything slow down. Oh, that didn't work at all. Sorry. Well, we have a 100-year egress coming out of here, emergency egress. It comes up the slope here. This is a deck portion, so it's raised above that flood elevation, and then it becomes concrete walkway here out to the access at Rose Hill Avenue. Mr. Dodo will provide additional info on the lengthy deep process. He can give some more information on that. Now moving on to the landscape plan, which is always a fun and exciting part for me. Again, I apologize for my computer being a little slow. Sheet L01 is the overall planting plan. As you can see, per regulations, we've got our canopy trees in the end islands. We're providing some screening for transformer and for the refuse area, some buffer plantings along the railroad side of the property. To the northwest of the building, in the area that slopes towards the river here, we are proposing the removal of remnant concrete, debris. There's one dead and falling tree here, which is not doing so well. Scrubby plant material and the extensive Japanese knotweed that's taking up a majority of this area here. We're proposing to remove all of that. And what we would do is we would then replant with a roadside matrix seed mix that consists of both of shrub, grass, and perennial seeds, and let that do its thing. We'll also install a couple of varieties of eastern red buds throughout, and then some sugar maples along the river here, and then some viburnums. Again, with the seed mix and this new planting, the idea is to outcompete any of the invasives coming back in. I know Japanese knotweed's a tough one, but that's what we're really trying to accomplish there. The same replanting treatment will occur on this northeast side here where some remediation has happened. Again, we'll seed with the roadside matrix mix, shrubs, perennials, grasses, and some shrubs in here with an ornamental tree along the back patio. This is a large concrete area that's to remain. It's retaining, there'll be a fence around it. So nothing is happening in terms of construction in this area along the river. In the northwest corner here, we're proposing to remove all of the Japanese knotweed in this area. There's a significant amount of existing trees. We're proposing to keep all of those trees, but to prune any of the dead or dying material for safety reasons in this area. Then again, once we've done the invasive removal, come back and heavily seed with that with a no-mow mix in this area, and then get some rhododendrons in here with some viburnums lining the access drive. And then just overall planting a little bit farther away from the river area, we have an evergreen screen planting in this area. So we're visually blocking and screening the site. It's a higher elevation up here, so the screen planting will do a nice job of concealing the building.
Mhm.
Let's see, the landscaping will be a significant improvement over the current site conditions, if anyone's had a chance to get out there. And the new plantings and seed mixes, I believe, will provide a nice buffer, especially for the overland flow as it filters the water as it moves through the site. I know that, sorry, that was a little lengthy, but I wanted to try and get a lot of information in a short amount of time.
Thanks, Abigail. I
Sure.
did want to add that the city remediation program, part 1, was subject to a permit issued by this commission in November 2019 for all the work that the city did. So you've seen this site before, and we hope you think the city did a good job implementing that permit. I'd like to turn it over to Ben Dodo to go through the civil engineering and the flood management.
Ben, do you want me to stop sharing, or do you
Yeah.
want me to? Okay.
Please.
Yep, done. Your turn.
Good evening, everybody. Benjamin Dodo, licensed professional engineer. I'm here tonight representing the applicant. My role on this project was, as it usually is the civil engineer. But in this case, on this particular job, it ended up being more of a flood and grading engineer than anything else, because the floodplain that Abigail and Peter mentioned and the Still River really dictated the design of this site and our approvals with the DEEP, which was required as part of this. We worked extensively with Antonio and the engineering department to sort of coordinate the remediation plan along with our site development. And that just didn't include the remediation and the site development. It also included the cut and fills and the grades that we're going to be at today. For those of you that are familiar with the site, if you were to look out there today, you basically see a slab occupying the majority of the site. That slab is going to be removed. Portions of it have already been removed as part of the remediation in areas that they've remediated. And the site is going to be developed as shown. I'm going to, the floodplain permit process is a process that is typically done, issued by the Planning Commission in Danbury. We're also in front of the Planning Commission. We have a hearing that's probably going to start next month. But in this case, we ended up getting a DEEP floodplain certification as well, because it was required, as Peter had mentioned, as part of the funding. It was a real high bar to achieve. It was a difficult process. We went through several iterations and several designs to make it work. We had a third-party consultant, Kata and Howard. And basically the process was we would design the site. When I say we, Abigail and myself, send it to the flood modeler, and they would basically run pre and post analysis. And as the results came in, they'd say, oh, didn't work. And I would keep making adjustments to the site, both in building location and elevations, until we finally got it to work. And I want to go over that process just a little bit, just to sort of show you what we did. This is called the existing flood map. And just to get a sense of where we are here, here's Fairfield process. Whoops. Here's Fairfield processing right here. Our site is right here, Rose Hill Ave, and the railroad tracks. All these the blue lines here are the Still River, the light blue, and actually the light blue are the floodway, the dark blue are the floodplain. The Still River, for those of you familiar with Danbury, actually runs, it goes over a dam behind Kingswood Kitchen, and it goes in overland flow, it goes under the railroad tracks, it flows under Fairfield Processing's building, through a culvert, under Rose Hill Ave, through an on-site culvert, and then again, it's open channel through most of the site, only to enter another culvert along the railroad tracks before it comes out on Rose Street. This portion of the river was not improved when the Army Corps came to Danbury years ago and redid the Still River through Danbury. That process started somewhere around here and went downstream. All these red lines here are actual cross sections that were part of our model. And as Abigail had mentioned, when we first looked at this, and it was an alternative, we first looked at trying to put the building up toward the front of the site here and the parking behind it. It just simply didn't work with the flood model, because the way the water flows here during the 100-year event, the water is not just restricted to the Still River channel. What ends up happening is 100-year flood waters bubble out of the Still River. They flow down Kingswood Kitchen parking lot under the railroad trestle. They leak out from the opening at the Still River Bridge, and they both run, water runs both in the river and across the site here on the railroad tracks. There's an area, if you can see, and I'm tracing it with my pen right now, right here, that is outside of the 100-year floodplain.
Yeah.
It serves almost like an island, if you can imagine, when the 100-year storm were to occur. So to go to the proposed flood map, you can see the conditions here where we have our building currently located, right here. And we had to locate this building in this location. Any other iteration, location, alternative simply didn't work. So here we are. When you get the 100-year storm now, the building is located in a spot that's dry. Portions of the site will continue to flood like they do today. And as Abigail had mentioned, we're bringing in a slight amount of net fill. That fill is primarily for the building. We're actually having about a 900 cubic yard cut in the floodplain. So the end result with this project is more flood storage. And also, there will be no increase in 100-year water surface elevations on site, upstream, or downstream as part of this. And that was sort of the criteria that the DEP and also the city of Danbury has as well for a floodplain permit. The building itself will be set 3.5 feet above the 100-year floodplain elevation. We're only required to be 1 foot above it. So we're conservatively above that. In fact, we're 1 foot above the 500-year floodplain elevation with this design. So to get a sense, if you were to go out to the site in the back corner where you see the slab that's sort of over where the building is back here.
Yep.
Our building is going to be 3 feet above that existing slab. So but the grades are going to be what they are out there today. You will basically walk up 3 feet to the building. We'll have it'll be handicap accessible. And as Abigail had mentioned, we do have a 100-year egress path. And this is required by both the city of Danbury and the DEP for egress in the event the 100-year storm occurs and there are people in the building. They can safely walk out without having to be rescued by a boat. Put it that way. The drainage design with this site ended up being a low impact drainage design. It sort of happened, and I'm flipping to the grading plan now, but to get a sense of what we have out there, I'm going to go to the drainage area map. Right here, right now, you can see the existing slab, and that slab is pretty much covers a good portion of the site. When we're all said and done, we'll have a lot less impervious. So mitigating runoff is very easy on this site because we're simply reducing the impervious area. What became a little more challenging was making the site work to marry with the remediation plan, and also to try to keep in one of the things the DEP wants, and this is something I think the Wetlands Commission wants, you don't always get to see it in an urban area, is a low impact design. This site has no curbing. It has no catch basins. It has no pipes that lead to the Still River. The site is graded to gently flow across the site, and drainage patterns to continue what they are overland, over a grass and meadow landscaped area into the Still River. Our roof drains discharge onto energy dissipating pads. So I did lie. We do have some storm piping. We have some 6-inch roof drains that discharge onto the ground. We're not sending any pipe directly into the Still River. So we have, natural attenuation ways to do this. This was something during the DEP process. They had a questionnaire, among other things, technically with relation to the Still River. We had questions and criteria that they wanted to see a low impact design as opposed to a traditional pipe to pond system that you tend to get in a lot of urban areas. And this actually worked very well, considering that we had to remove soil. And a lot of times when you remove soil, it's harder to make your storm piping work with your grades and pitches. But it also helped with the fact that the site had some remediation done, that we don't have to go back up and dig up areas that are deemed okay per the remediation plan. So it was sort of a win-win situation with respect to this. We ran the storm drainage. The city of Danbury requires we run a 25-year storm. The DEP asked us to run a 2, a 10, and a 100-year. We have reductions in overall runoff for all of those. The site will be served by city water and city sewer. There's actually, we're going to bring in a water service to the site. It'll be a combined fire and domestic. The building will be sprinklered. The sewer actually already exists on site today. There's an old manhole here that we had jetted out that still works, and it's tied to the city of Danbury sanitary sewer system. So we're really just going to connect to that. And the site will also be served by underground electric and underground gas. Let's see. That's really all I have for my presentation. Like I said, this was a little front loaded because of the DEP floodplain approval, which was a lot more than the floodplain. As I mentioned, it included drainage, but it also included a sediment and erosion control plan, sediment and erosion control notes and details. So that was all done, and that's going to be part of this application. I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone may have. And as Antonio had mentioned to you, because I know I was at that meeting earlier this spring when he got the permit for the remediation on the site. He said that, once the remediation was completed, we would be coming next with this phase of the project, and here we are today.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, Ben. Anybody have any questions? Well, Peter, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sure, I was just going to sum up, if you don't mind. As I said earlier, every activity that we proposed on this site is a regulated activity because it's located within 200 feet of the Still River. However, we don't believe that what we're proposing constitutes a significant activity. And there's three reasons that. First is a lot of the site work has already been accomplished pursuant to a prior permit that you issued to the city for their work in remediation part 1. Second, the entire site, almost as Ben showed you in his plan, is currently covered by a concrete slab. Some has been removed. We're going to be removing more, replacing it with our proposal. And third, the design incorporates elements of LID, as Ben talked about. So because we don't believe this is a significant activity, we'd like to ask that you act on it without a public hearing. And as Ben noted, we're happy to answer any questions and deal with any reviews that you have. That's all I have. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions on the commission?
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Ben, I saw there, you mentioned provisions for pedestrian movement off of the site in a 100-year flood. With regards to would there be any plan for cars, parking of cars, any potential flooding issues with an interaction of a vehicle being, left or flooded on the site?
Yes, that's a good question, Mark. I failed to mention that. Part of the DEP approval process included a flood contingency plan, which I can give you guys a copy of it if you want, but I can sort of summarize what happens here. The staff at this facility are all going to be trained and made aware of the plan that exists. And this is part of our DEP permit. It was a requirement among submittal, along with the flood analysis, the drainage analysis, that an emergency management plan be prepared. And basically, Mark, when you know a big storm is coming, we all know about it, especially with a watershed like the Still River. We know about it a day in advance, 2 days in advance, a week in advance, if you're watching the Weather Channel. But basically, when certain storm events are predicted, it triggers actions by the Women's Center. So basically, when anything over the 50-year storm gets triggered, there's certain things that need to be done. And at certain levels, rainfall events, the automobiles will be evacuated from the site when we know the site will flood. And when I say the site will flood, portions of the parking lot will flood. That's a given. As I mentioned, it's 3 feet below. Other portions of the plan include when and if it's predicted that you're going to approach the 100-year storm, the whole facility gets evacuated in advance of that. So in theory, when the 100-year storm happens, we usually have advance notice, because again, this is the Still River. This isn't, a little creek in my backyard that could get a flash flood from a summer rainstorm and flood. The Still River has a big watershed. We know when these storms are coming. We have advance notice. So in essence, we don't even anticipate having to use this walkway, Mark, because in theory, the building will be empty. But say, for instance, we do want to check to make sure no one's in the building, or the fire department wants to come and no one's in the building. They can drive their trucks in the water if they wanted, but they don't have to. This walkway will be, and this is required, this walkway in the city of Danbury zoning regs. It's going to be the entire walkway itself, both the at-grade portions, which are right here, are above the 100-year floodplain elevation, as are portions here, and they lead to all, if you look, all our emergency exits are connected to this perimeter walkway here. And the only thing that we have is we have a section right through here in the middle. And this is going to look like, the easiest way to describe it is when you go to a beach and you cross a dune and there's a little catwalk that's sort of a raised deck.
Yeah.
That's how that's going to be built. And the reason it was built this way was the Still River, as I mentioned, when it floods, it has to have the ability to balance its flow from west to east. We had initially designed this walkway, or when I say we, I designed it as a dike. I designed it as a raised path. Like if you can imagine a sidewalk that was set a foot or two above grade. And what happened was our flood model kept not working. We were either getting flows that were too high on the Still River side and backing up water onto our neighbors, or vice versa, too high on this side that was backing water upstream. So there is an emergency management plan in place, and it addresses what happens both when the parking lot is anticipated to flood and when we do get storms at the 100-year level. But the plan is to have nobody at the facility when that is forecast. And if it does happen and it is forecast, or say it happens in the middle of the night and no one's aware of it, which they should be because the plan does call for constant monitoring during those storms, that once it reaches a level that it does get evacuated. But say, for instance, you were sleeping there and the 100-year storm came, in theory, the cars would be already removed from the parking lot, but you'd be safe and you'd be able to walk out that path, or someone would be able to come down that path and help you out. And that's the whole intent of the regulation. So it's not to create an island of stranded people.
Right.
Did I answer your question, Mark?
You did, and more. I was going to follow up and say we all know in this day and age that the 100-year flood is becoming actually even more commonplace than it used to be, and we're talking now about greater than 100-year floods, almost up to a 500-year flood. So certainly those kinds of precautions need to be in place for even greater. It's almost like the 100-year flood is becoming the minimum to, in my opinion, to design to in order to keep folks safe.
Exactly, Mark. And just to make you feel a little more comfortable, and I did mention that we set this 3.5 feet above the 100-year flood and 1 foot above the 500-year flood, which is more than is required, but it as the design engineer, it's what I felt comfortable with doing. Now, the other thing was when the DEP asked us what drainage numbers to use, Mark, we used this NOAA Atlas 14 Volume 10 version 3, which, not to bore you, but they are numbers that are higher than traditional state of Connecticut Department of Transportation runoff curves. And they sort of reflect and take into account the higher intensity storms that you're discussing, Mark.
Uh-huh.
So for instance, our 25-year storm, and I'm doing this off my memory, instead of it being a 5-inch storm, these intense numbers are a 6-inch storm. And that doesn't seem like a lot, but it is a lot. It at times makes the difference between the 50 and the 100.
Right.
So we did use those NOAA numbers, which are a lot more conservative, and they reflect some of the unusual weather patterns that people are reporting or wanting to use, as opposed to the ones we've been using for 50 years. So we did use the higher numbers with this as well, Mark.
Thanks, Ben.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, one more question.
Sure, go ahead, Mark.
Abigail,
Yes.
I heard your plan in terms of trying to control the knotweed. But would there be any follow-up plan in terms of longer term control in case the knotweed wasn't adequately controlled by overseeding and the planting that you plan?
I think that I will have to discuss that with Peter on how we will deal with that, because all of that invasive removal is actually happening on what's going to be City of Danbury property. It will not be owned by the Women's Center. So I need to figure out logistics and talk to Peter about that. I don't know if you have any thoughts off the top of your head, Peter, of how we could do a maintenance plan or follow up on that mitigation.
My proposal, back when we decided to split the lots, was that there would be an easement in place that would allow the Women's Center to enter onto parcel 2 and I mean, use it. Number one, there's a lawn there. Also, we have our emergency egress there. We need an easement for that. But also that we would have the ability to install, maintain, repair, and replace fencing and landscaping. And so that, invasive removal will be part of that easement as part of construction, but also part of our maintenance going forward would be to make sure we keep it clean. But
So I
don't
think
have
that
a
I could
formal
prepare,
document.
sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
I don't have a formal easement document yet, but I have discussed it with City Council.
But I think to help with that, I could prepare a mitigation, a maintenance plan. Not a mitigation plan, sorry, a maintenance plan for that specific area and for the invasives. So we can keep on top of that. I know Japanese knotweed is just, they're all horrible, but it's not an easy one to control.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I agree. And I know that it is a difficult task. And I just like to look forward a little bit and just to have something in place so that the entities can fall back on some guidance if it
Sure.
does get out of control.
Sure. Yeah, I
And we
can
can-
definitely
we can-
draft something.
Okay. And we can build that into some conditions of approval as well.
Okay.
Well said, Mark.
That's
Yes, sir.
exactly what I was thinking. We could do that with when we put together the conditions of approval, we can reference a plan to maintain or an attempt to control the knotweed because it is pervasive. So.
Okay. Great. Can
Anyone
do.
else have any questions? Now's the time. Finding none, I need a motion to table this until July 22nd to give staff a chance to come up with a report.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded to table regulated activity 1122, the Women's Center, until July 22nd, 2020. Give staff to come up with a report. Is that fine with you, Joe?
Yep, I'll be able to get that done. The project impact report done with various conditions in there, and I can tailor those as necessary when Abigail comes up with a plan.
Okay, I'll try to have something to you early in the week, early next week.
Okay, that's fine.
Those in favor of tabling it? Yellow's yes. Dr. Cronin? Mary, you a yes? Did we lose Mary?
Yes. Yep,
Yes?
yes. Yes,
Okay, thank
Yep.
you. Jeff Harold,
Yes,
Mark Masood,
Yes.
Alex Walk,
Yes.
motion carries. Thank you.
Thank
Nice
you very much.
presentation, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. You too.
Everybody be safe and healthy, huh? Next item on the agenda. Violations. 10 Blueberry Lane. We have 2 notice of violations, and Joe will explain that to you. I hope, right, Joe?
Yeah, so we got a notification from our zoning folks that a gentleman Blueberry Lane is a series of mobile homes, and a gentleman was excavating below his mobile home. in, I guess, in an attempt to put in a basement or under parking. I'm not exactly sure what his intention was, but he, in order to access the underneath, he cut a road into a wetland area that's just covered with wetland vegetation to access to the area that he could excavate. So, so we issued a notice of violation, which was delivered by sheriff, and it's my understanding that that they have not responded. So the situation is that the property, because it's a mobile home park, the property is owned by one person, and the individual units are owned by the individuals. So the individual who owns the unit, who did the work, was issued a notice of violation, as was the property owner.
Joe and I did not cite with this, so if we don't hear from them, probably in the next week, we'll just send this up to Corporation Council.
I think it's headed that way anyway. I do not believe that they have responded to any of the notices of violation
They haven't
from
found a zoning either.
planning and zoning, right? And they were delivered by sheriff.
Everyone clear with this?
Yep.
We're all set? Okay.
Mhm.
Comes the part. Next on the agenda is 9 Zinn Road. 9 Zinn Road, you should have in your package a letter from Joe Mead, as well as a map of the letter and the deck. Anyone have any questions on this? Did everybody read it, or?
Yep.
It involves extending a deck on the back of a house. Okay? Did everybody get the letter from Joe Mead to begin with?
Yes, I did. Yes, and I
Yep,
read
I
it.
did.
Yes.
Okay, anybody have any questions on this?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
just to add, it's also, it appears that the applicant is asking for an extension of their current permit for another 1 to 2 years so that they can complete dredging of the pond, which apparently was authorized as part of the original permit as well, from what I can understand.
they've already had one extension. I'll let Kathleen, did you want to say a few words? Kathleen, did you want to say a few words?
She's muted, Bernie.
Pardon?
She's on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you
Yes.
now.
Okay,
Yes.
hi. Hi, yeah, I had a permit to put an addition on my house, which included the small deck on the back. All of that was done except for the railing around the deck, which was going to be completed this year. So I actually thought I just wanted to make the deck a little longer. It's 6 feet by 10 feet. I just wanted to move it across the back of my house another 10 feet. So when I contacted the permit center, I didn't realize that my permit was, the permit expired
Oh.
a few months ago. So Christina told me to reapply for the permit, which I did. And then I had to, because I'm living on the pond in a brook, I had to include the EIC in the permit. My permit for the pond goes until, I believe, the 15th of September of 2020. So while I was doing all this, David Glaxell, who is the guy who remediated my pond, has all the dredging from the pond is up on my lawn, and it's a kind of dewatering.
Oh.
So he came over a few months ago and he said the dirt is not yet dewatered enough to move off my land. So I said, well, do you think it will be by September? And he said he was not sure. He hoped so. That kind of was our plan, that it would be done by September. So I just thought, well, maybe I need to, while I'm doing the permit to expand the deck, then maybe I need to ask for another like 6 or 8 months to expand that EIC permit for the pond, because that won't be finished until he moves that material off my land.
Okay, your
That's kind of
permit
where
is,
I'm at.
your permit is good until November 17th, 2020.
Sorry, what?
Your permit, the permit you have now is valid through November 17th, 2020.
November 17th, okay.
Yes.
Um,
If you don't have it finished by then, you're gonna have to reapply because you already had one extension.
yeah, the first extension was just given by the town because that originally started and then we had that recession. So a lot of those permits were extended. I can call him. I can't believe it won't be done by the 17th, but he said he can't tell until, it depends how dried out the dirt is. So he'll come back next month and look at it again. So,
Okay, you have the letter from Joe though, don't you? From Joe Mead? You have a copy of the letter from Joe Mead?
sorry,
Do you have a copy of the letter from Joe Mead?
a recent letter?
Yeah,
No.
so I did a memo for the file that indicated that the work on the deck would be acceptable under the existing permit.
Okay, that's great. I don't have a copy of that. Did you email it to me or do I go in and pick it up on the permit center? Or?
May I say something, Mr. Gallo?
Yes.
I only transmitted it, scanned it to the commissioners late this afternoon.
Okay.
I did not send a copy to Kathleen.
Could we do that tomorrow perhaps?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks, Mary.
You're welcome.
Right, Kathleen?
Mr.
you all
Chairman?
set? Yes.
Just a question again, if I may. So I'm a little, this is just administrative, but I'm a little confused. So we're talking about two different permits here. The inland wetlands permit is still valid, but some other permit, maybe for the deck itself, is what has expired? Is that what's going on?
Correct.
No, that didn't expire, did it, Joe?
No. So what happened is that the EIC permit that was originally granted in November, it will be 10 years. So the original one was, we do 5-year extensions, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right,
Up to,
so
yeah.
the original permit 870 RR was issued and that was good for 5 years. And then there was an extension that was offered on that as well. So that 5 years is going to be up November 17th.
Okay, I
So
heard
they-
mention of a permit that's expired. That must be
Well,
a building permit for the deck.
Expiring. Yeah, well, I think that's it. So I think with, she had originally, so the original work from the building department, and I'm not sure how their expiration dates work for the building department on how they issue permits or when work needs to be done. But for the EIC, obviously it's 5 years and then 1 5-year extension. And then after that, you have to reapply.
Correct.
So she
Okay.
has till November 17th.
Sounds like.
Okay, Kathleen, you all set?
I think so. I haven't seen that letter, but or the memo from Joe, but I'll see that tomorrow.
You'll
So
have
I
it.
think everything should be good.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that should certainly cover the work for the deck. I can't imagine, the other, removing the dirt from the site, if that might be a time dependent thing, but certainly you should be able to get the deck built as certainly by the end of the EIC permit.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Everybody's on the same page. Okay, good. The only thing left is adjournment if anybody wants to.
Woohoo.
So moved or whatever.
Second,
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. Bernie Gillo's a yes. Dr. Cronin,
Yes.
Jeff Harold,
No.
Mark
Yes.
Masul,
No,
Alex Wolf.
Yes.
Motion's adjourned at 8:00. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Night,
Good night,
everybody.
everyone.
Stay
Thank you.
healthy.
bye.
Stay healthy, everyone.
You too.